Welcome to Tech Talk and to our special swissnex series. Every month, we travel around the world together with swissnex to bring you the latest on innovation and technology. And the next stop on our tour is Boston, that recently hosted Aerial Futures, the Drone Frontier, connecting Switzerland with the U.S. using, you guessed it, drones. Francesco Bortoluzzi, project coordinator for swissnex Boston, joined us from the CNN studios in New York to tell us more.
We've tried to really bring the drone ecosystem from Switzerland to North America and the other way around, too, to really spark open international conversations on the future of drone technology and applications.
So this was a bit a meet and greet between Swiss drone experts and U.S. drone experts, kind of just bringing them together.
Exactly, but it's not just meet and greet, it's meet, greet, and collaborate, because that's what we always try to achieve as swissnex, to really foster mutually beneficial collaborations across country. And when you have something like a drone cage where you can see the drones actually live, moving, flying, delivering stuff, then that's how connections happen in the best way.
So tell me about the outcome of this event. I mean, did these connections happen? Can you give us any concrete examples?
We've had a drone accelerator from New York State actually talk to some of the Swiss companies that they might enroll in the accelerator program, and also on the American side and on the Swiss-American side as well. So many connections. The problem is that they don't always happen on site, and the outcomes are far in the future.
I was going to say the timeline is probably a bit longer. It's not like it happens overnight, right? These things take a long time. But the reason I even ask is, of course, because swissnex is a Swiss government-backed initiative. So I assume you are responsible for telling whether or not this was money well spent.
Well, I can tell you already it's money very well spent. The problem is it's a long game, and it really plays into the hand of what Switzerland has been doing for the past decades in the field of diplomacy, but also of building its own image as a place that not only has a great reputation, but also has many competences in the field that we like to call of ERI, education, research, and innovation, to which swissnex always likes to add a plus, which is the arts.
And of course, in Switzerland, we are very aware and actually really pride ourselves here on being home to more or less 80 startups, drone-related startups, as well as home to Drone Valley, which is, you know, what this wonderful space between major players like ETH and EPFL. So did you find that this was also reflected in the U.S. participants? I mean, did they also, what was the perception? How did they perceive the Swiss technology?
Well, they perceived the Swiss technology as being really high-tech and being really very developed and very useful and having very interesting applications. But I should say about the Drone Valley, as you say, is not just between Zurich and Lausanne. It's also between Lausanne, Zurich, and Lugano, because we have a robotics AI lab in Ticino. And as we put together our Aerial Futures program, we were very careful in selecting companies and research institutions from all the three major Swiss linguistic regions to really showcase Switzerland as a whole to the American public.
I have to say I'm very happy that you also brought Lugano into the conversation. And speaking of conversations, I mean, one that no doubt came up amongst drone operators and creators on both sides of the Atlantic is this talk of regulation. I mean, especially in the U.S., there's an imminent increase in it. You know, the U.S. Senate recently approved the FAA Reauthorization Act, which will, again, oversee drone traffic, et cetera, and a bit limit this, what was effectively a bit of a Wild West, an aerial Wild West, in the U.S. What were the conversations around this?
Switzerland as a country has been looked at from the rest of the world as a very enabling ecosystem, not just because we have top universities, top research institutions, and a very friendly business environment, but because we have some of the most permissive regulations in the field of drones. And here in the US, sometimes it's difficult to do testing for a starting startup, to do testing for their technology, whereas in Switzerland it's much easier. And that's why one of the outcomes out of our activity in Boston 3 weeks ago is that one of these companies is already talking with promotion agencies in Switzerland about doing testing in Switzerland that they cannot do here in the US. But then you're also right that it's not really technology the problem when you speak about drones, it's actually policy.
So I mean, it's obviously positive then that the Swiss skies are still friendly to drone operators, especially coming from the US. But do you think then there's a danger that we're going to be just overrun by drones in our skies?
No, I mean, we haven't been overrun by people doing activities in fintech and cryptocurrencies yet. So one of the biggest advantages of Switzerland, it is that it is a very diverse country. You see it with, all the different linguistic regions, the different cultural approaches of doing things. And so even though it is a small country, you can always find your niche in Switzerland. And that's what's going to happen most probably also with drones, because certain areas are going to serve certain specific applications or opportunities. And Switzerland as a whole is going to be able to digest all the requests that come over from the world and countries like the US.
And was there any feeling that over-regulation could stifle development and creativity, or?
Well, that's always the problem. When you have too much regulation, sometimes, research and development of new technologies can be hampered, but that's one of the things that puts Switzerland on the map for these sort of things, because we don't have too much regulations. We usually try to have just enough.
Sound like a conversation to continue with a drone expert? Well, I agree. Joining us now from Lausanne is a keynote speaker of swissnex Boston's Drone Frontier event, Dario Floreano. He's director of EPFL's Laboratory of Intelligent Systems and director of NCCR Robotics. Thank you, Dario, for joining us today.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello. All right, so earlier we were speaking with Francesco Bortoluzzi from swissnex Boston, one of the organizers, and we were discussing that the ultimate goal of these kinds of events is to foster collaboration. Now, how successful, in your opinion, are these events in doing this, and how important is it in the case of drone technology?
Yes, so definitely this particular event was very successful. I met a lot of people, both from academia and companies and investors who are interested in what we are doing here in Switzerland in the drone research and drone industry, in the sense that we have quite a few spin-off companies coming out of Switzerland now, some of which have become already quite successful and have products on the market selling internationally, including in the US.
Have you been surprised by the boom in the drone industry since you began?
Yes, it has been surprising, to be honest. I remember when I started, we were flying, I remember 10 drones at the same time over campus here outside EPFL. And they were like small engines, about a pound each in weight. And at some point, they were flying up 200 meters, whatever it is in feet, in the sky. And I thought, hey, we should ask the Office of Federal Aviation whether we can do this. And I contacted them and I said, a drone? You're flying drones? What is it? And, they were thinking of these huge machines with weapons on board. Then they came and we showed to them those small, fixed-wing drones and said, hey, they are autonomous. They can fly around. I said, they are autonomous. What do you mean? Anyway, and from there we started a dialogue and a collaboration. And as the technology was advancing in the drone, in essentially universities, both here and in the US and in Asia, in China, university research was advancing very quickly. The regulatory offices were not ready to make these machines fly. And I think one of the key facts that happened and allowed the industry to really boom was the fact that regulatory instances like the Office of Federal Aviation here in Switzerland set rules for making these machines fly out. Now, I'm talking here about professional drones, so drones that can be used for taking photographs, inspecting, for example, fields in agriculture or mines. Without those regulations, I think we would have not been able to grow so fast.
Do you find then that regulation, does that stifle creativity development or not?
I think the regulatory offices are around the world, I should say, today, but especially in Switzerland, for where I know it better, they are doing a great job. On the one hand, I myself, even if we develop a lot of drones, I'm concerned about the safety of these machines as they fly up in the skies, and as we'll see more of this, and also about the privacy issues, security issues against cyber attacks, and where these machines can fly. So I think they have a very tough series of problems they have to tackle from a regulatory perspective. They're doing a great job.
Right, which is maybe coming back to the topic of collaboration, which is where we started our interview today. You are in the midst of a collaboration at the moment with Stanford University, with your Flycrow tugs. Speaking of also future drone technology, tell me a little bit about this. It's micro drones that pull heavy loads. I mean, could you have done this also, this is a question, without the support of an American colleague in this case?
I think the collaboration with the American colleague was essential because my colleagues at Stanford University, the team of Professor Mark Kotowski, they had developed this very interesting, for many years they've been developing these very interesting adhesive technologies that allow small robots, for example, to walk up on glasses on walls. And more recently, they had shown that if they can put a small winch within a very tiny ground robot, terrestrial robot, and that winch would be attached to one of these small adhesive, and by doing so, by rolling up a cable, they could pull very heavy loads. And then we were developing drones, and then we thought drones have always this limitation that they can carry very small payloads, and we said, wait a minute, we could fly a drone up to an elevated surface, land on that surface. Then, thanks to these very strong special adhesives, which are biologically inspired, let the drone stick to that surface, and with an embedded winch, we can essentially lift very heavy loads. So that was the idea. The idea was, you have a drone connected to a cable to a very heavy payload, that it could be a sensor. The drone flies out with the cable, goes to the top of a building, for example, sticks to the top of the building with this adhesive, and then pulls up this heavy weight. Now, what we did also, which was quite fun, the researchers from Stanford and from my lab, they said, hey, okay, could we open a door with two of these drones? And then what they did is that they specialized some of the extremities of this drone so that one drone can stick to the glass of a window and as a device that can pull down the handle of the door. And another drone at the same time flies on the bottom of the door and then sticks under the door another small hinge with which it can pull the door while the other drone pulls down the handle, and then together they can open this door. So this is a simple concept, but it shows that if you have multiple of these drones that not only fly out in the sky, but they also exploit the environment and they work together, they can do things that we have not even imagined before.
So obviously lots to look forward to in the drone industry. Just to wrap it up, though, what was the overall perception that you find of your U.S. counterparts of the Swiss technology and the Swiss drone industry?
I think there were many interesting questions in the audience in Boston from our American colleagues and entrepreneurs, company owners, and they were interested in Switzerland not only as a place where we have not only many drone companies, but now we have companies that provide components and services for drones, I should say. So we have approximately 60 or 70 companies including established companies, providing services and components for drones here in Switzerland, which is a relatively compact country. They were interested for this, but they were also interested in Switzerland because of the Office of Federal Aviation having a very flexible and fast way of making these companies fly drones in our country. So they see Switzerland as an experimental region where they can start deploying their services before they then make them scale it up to large countries.
Exactly. And wonderful. Thank you so much, Dario, for your insights and for joining us today on Tech Talk. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.